Iraq, 1991. A military operation is organized, where bombs are dropped and civilians are hurt. Jack Starks, a soldier there, sees a kid. He goes over to him to comfort him and reassure him. But the kid is armed and shoots at Jack's head. Jack is taken to the treatment tent, where a nurse writes him down as dead, until Jack opens his eyes. The nurse rushes around looking for a doctor. 12 months later, Jack is still alive. Despite the shot he took in the head, he now suffers from amnesia. He has no family. Jack is walking down a road in a cold winter, where he sees a mother and her daughter with a broken down car. He sees the mother visibly sick and asks her daughter if she takes any medication. Jack charges the daughter named Jackie to keep her mother awake, while he tries to repair the vehicle. Jackie asks Jack for his dog tag. He gladly gives it to her. Jackie's mother wakes up, visibly drunk, insulting Jack for hugging her daughter, and even though her daughter explains to her that he repaired the car, she still sees him as a dangerous individual. Jack simply grabs his bag and leaves them alone. As Jack is walking down the freezing road, a car passes by. He signals that he wants to hitchhike, and the driver tells him to come in. They exchange some quick words and drive, until a police car tells them to stop. The driver is probably escaping, as he says to Jack that he won't go back to prison and shoots the policeman 3 times. Jack is took to court, where he is judged for the murder of the police officer. But due to his amnesia, he doesn't remember what happened that day. He only remembers Jackie. He remembers at the end that there was another man with him, but the judge considers him insane. He sends him to the psychiatric hospital. The car where Jack is transported arrives to the hospital. He's escorted by 2 men inside, while being chained in both his legs and hands. He's finally released from his chains when they put him in his chambers. After a few minutes, a man comes in and throws to Jack's face his clothes. After what, he simply waits in his bed, smoking cigarette after cigarette, until a nurse comes and gives him his medicine, which he takes without asking questions. In the morning, a nurse and a man rush into his bed. The man immobilizes Jack while the nurse gives him a sedative. He is then secretly carried through some dark stairs, and after he gets to the destination, a doctor waits him there. He tries to say that he shouldn't be here, but he's straitjacketed and put into a box looking like the morgue ones. Inside the box, Jack sees some memories. He remembers the kid that shot him, the man that shot the police officer, and a woman. After 3 hours, the doctor comes back, and even though Jack is still conscious, he asks his personnel to take him to the upper floor. The nurse and the man take off his camisole and take him to the room where other patients are. A certain Rudy Mackenzie introduces himself to Jack. He's clearly hyperactive and wants to chat with Jack, even though he's clearly not in the mood for that. After Rudy explains to Jack why he's here, a nurse comes and asks them if they're good. As Rudy answers an elaborate sentence, Jack simply asks the nurse if he's alright, implying that he's completely fine and here unwittingly. At night, Jack is took again to the room where the doctor is. This time, the doctor thanks Jack for his compliance, but Jack quickly grabs the camisole and strikes the doctor as hard as he can with it. He's forced again in the camisole, and is put in the box a second time. A nurse goes to the doctor and asks him about Jack's treatment. He doubts the utility of putting him inside a box for 3 hours. The doctor dodges his questions, saying that we can't break something that is already broken. The nurse goes back to the room where the box is. He's about to open it, but says to Jack that he can't help him. Jack begs for release, but the nurse leaves the room. He is then struck by memories. He first remembers that woman again, then he remembers a more detailed part of his life. Jack is out in the snow. In front of a motel, a woman comes out of it and stares at Jack before getting into her car. She at first doesn't talk to him, but she backtracks and tells him that it's Christmas Eve, and asks if he wants her to take him somewhere. Jack doesn't really know where he should go, but after the woman insisted, he got into the car. She takes him to her place, and she makes phone calls there to see if there are any shelters available, but all are closed. Jack thanks her for giving him a ride and takes his jacket to leave, but she tells him to stay, as it's freezing outside. She goes to the kitchen to prepare some drinks, and she breaks a glass, which made Jack recall his service. She tells Jack he can stay here for the night, but she refuses to hear his name, as she says she doesn't want to know him, just help him. While the woman is taking a shower, Jack prepares dinner for both of them, consisting of 2 sandwiches. They exchange small talk for a bit, and the girl sleeps on the couch. Jack goes around the apartment to find a dog tag who belongs to Jack Starks. He then sees pictures in the walls and there is no doubt the girl is Jackie. He wakes her up to tell her that he's the man who helped her, but she doesn't believe him, saying that Jack Starks died the 1st of January 1993 and that it was 2007. Suddenly, Jack is back in the box and in the cold reality. The nurses rush in to take him out, and the nurse blames the doctor for leaving him there all night, but the doctor says that they shouldn't consult him for every decision, even though he refused to let him out. The nurse who asked Jack if he was alright confronts the doctor about the medication he gave Jack, saying that it is unnecessary. She also confronts him about the bruises Jack has on his body. She warns him that Jack won't become another Ted Casey, meaning Jack won't become the doctor's guinea pig. We see the same nurse go to her home, where she lives with a female and a disabled child she takes great care of. Jack is took to his chambers, where he sleeps for almost a whole day. He's on perfusion and completely lost. The doctor comes and talks with him. He informs him that it's the 26th of December 1992. He tells him about a patient he had a few years back, Ted Casey, who took advantage of a little girl. Everyone thought he was mad. He died inside the hospital. After the doctor left, Jack took off his perfusion. He managed to grab a jacket and leave the hospital. He started walking away from that place until the nurse saw him from a window. She goes to him, explains to him that he can't leave the facility, and asks him about Dr. Becker's treatment. Jack tells her that he feels like a completely other person because of it. Jack and Rudy eat together. Jack asks him about the box, but Rudy stays evasive about it, as two nurses are monitoring their discussion. But as soon as they leave, Rudy tells him what he knows about the box, and he explains to him that he stopped going there by provoking the doctor. Next, there is a meeting in the hall. Rudy talks about how the organization of the organized contacted him. The medical service tries to tell him it doesn't exist, but Jack joins him and vouches for the existence of the organization. They start a small riot in the hospital. Jack is put in the box again. This time, he remembers what happened with the cop. The officer came over to them, asking Jack and the driver to step out of the car. The driver gets out and shoots at the police officer. The officer shot Jack and he got killed by the driver, who left his gun to Jack to incriminate him. He then remembers memories from his childhood with his mother, and he's back to the motel. He goes inside, and Jackie instantly recognizes him. She grabs him and sits with him at a table. She tells him that she doesn't know what to believe anymore. He asks her how he died. She answers she doesn't know precisely, but she informs him that the Dr. Becker was using a treatment that was forbidden in 1970, and the Dr. Lawrence and the nurse that talks to Jack treated a child. This information was factually true, as it's the same kid. They decide to go to Alpine Grove, the psychiatric hospital where he died. Once they get inside, they go and ask Dr. Lawrence about Jack. She doesn't tell them much information about him, and stays very evasive. She suspects something as weird as Jack looks exactly like the patient she had over a decade ago. Once back, Jack and Jackie kiss, and they make love at her apartment. But in the morning, Jack vanishes from her bed and wakes up in his hospital bed. Dr. Lawrenson, from 1992, talks with Jack, tells him that she can't stop Dr. Becker's treatment without his consent. But Jack explains to her how he travels to 2007. She is obviously skeptic. And then Jack mentions Babak, the child that she's treating. She asks him how he knows about it, and he keeps telling her she told him in 2007. She still doesn't believe his time travel story and says that it's part of his hallucinations. Dr. Lawrenson goes back to treat Babak, and Jack is put back in the box. He teleports to Jackie's car, and after a kiss in the car, she tells him how Dr. Lawrenson healed Babak. They then go to Dr. Becker's house. They find his wife there, who tells them that he's in church. Jackie and Jack go to that church to learn more about Jack's death. Jack talks to him and torments him for what he did to him. Dr. Becker tells him that Jack told him the name of the patients he used that treatment on, and leaves crying. Jack and Jackie get back in the car, but in the blink of an eye, he disappears and reappears in the box. Dr. Becker takes him out of it, and Jack tells him the name of all the patients he used the treatment on and says that they will haunt him forever. Dr. Becker cries hearing this. Jack is took to another room where he meets with Dr. Lawrenson, where he explains to her how she healed Babak in the future. Even though the treatment Jack said to do was very risky and could permanently disable Babak, Lawrenson chooses to do it anyways. And to her surprise, it actually works, and for the first time, Babak talked. Lawrenson goes back to see Jack, and he asks her to take her where Jackie lives as a child. She sneaks him out of the hospital and takes him there. He knocks on the door, and Jackie, child Jackie, opens it. He plays and chats with her a little and tells he to call her mom. Her mom comes and asks why he's here. He gives her a letter he wrote and asks her to believe what it says. The woman nods and Jack thanks her. Dr. Lawrenson takes Jack back to the hospital, and they arrive there. Jack falls on his head. He's heavily bleeding from it, but he has only one wish: to be put in camisole and back in the box. Jackie's mother reads the letter. It warns her about her death and about how to prevent it. It says that her death will devastate Jackie, so it must be avoided. Once in the box, Jack reappears to Jackie, but something has changes. His letter changed the future. Jackie proposes to Jack to give him a ride to the hospital, which he gladly accepts. She calls her mother and wishes her a happy new year.